Welcome to the Chasetown Podcast, part of the Cavs media family. I'm your host, Justin Rowan. The Chasetown is presented by Fubo, the official streaming partner of the Cavs. Watch over 350 channels of live sports and TV, including FanDuel Sports Network without cable. There's no cost and no commitment. Try for free at FuboTV.com/Cavs. Well, we knew the Toronto Raptors were going to try to do different things to make the Cavs uncomfortable. They came out with a much more spirited and physical effort, but the Cavs were able to weather the storm and come away with a 2-0 series lead. Joining me today is my co-host, Carter Rodriguez. Carter, how you doing, buddy?
Nice to have really talented players. I'll tell you what, Jack. This was a game for the stars. This is a game where and really on both sides of the ball, where one of the Raptors stars and Brandon Ingram just has, one of the worst games of his career. And meanwhile, even when the Raptors do everything right, there's Donovan Mitchell, there's James Harden, there's Evan Mobley, just to break their backs and their spirits with some unbelievable shot making. And I want to start the game with Donnie because, I thought he was really good in game one. I thought he was bananas in this game. I thought his the angles he took were so sharp and decisive. The handle was so tight. The finishing was phenomenal. The shot making, both in the mid range and from three, phenomenal. Thought he kept the offense going. 5 assists to 1 turnover. I thought the defense was pretty solid in this one as well. I just thought it was a super duper star game from Donovan. And I know it was a 3-star game, but I just felt like I had to jump out with Donovan right off the rip. He was nuts.
I'm glad that you started with Donovan because, one, I concur with everything you said. I do think that for the most part, he's been playing pretty focused defense, much better than he had in the regular season. But I think that this is some of his best playoff basketball just from a floor balance standpoint that he's played with the Cavs. Like I have loved his approach in both of these games. And I think it's significant because this isn't necessarily like the easiest matchup in the world. I know Toronto is missing, Emmanuel quickly at the point of attack, but Jamal Shead and Jacoby Walter are both good defensive players. The Raptors are capable of throwing a lot of physicality at you. There's a lot of kind of grabbing, holding, things like that. And these are types of situations where we've seen Don sometimes get a little rattled or get baited into some bad shots. And I just feel like
get baited into bad pace too.
Yeah, right. Like just kind of abandoning it or having offensive possessions where he's kind of made up his mind of what he's going to do regardless of what the defense is giving him. Whereas when you watch James Harden play, like he is assessing all of the time out there. Don kind of goes off of instinct, but I feel like his instincts have all been on the money so far in this series. And, the balance with which he's taken some of these shots that shouldn't be an on-balance shot. Like there was one where probably could have been called either for a foul or a travel. I would have argued that he traveled because of the foul, but that leaning away shot in the first quarter was nuts. Like he still got the core strength to square his shoulders and finish those shots. But I just think that this is some of the best, most mature basketball that we've seen Donovan Mitchell play. And I do think that this is a product of having someone like James Harden that is able to run as much as he is and can take a lot of kind of the blows from the physical defense of the Toronto Raptors on the perimeter. I think that Harden is keeping Don in that perfect balance where he's not asked to do too much and he can contribute at his best and most efficient level. I just think this is the best playoff basketball, at least from an aesthetic standpoint. I just feel like the process could not be better right now for Don.
Yeah, he was phenomenal. Matt in the YouTube chat said many are now calling it Ladonto. And for some reason, I hadn't gotten to that one yet, but it feels so good. I take a special pleasure to this day in beating the Toronto Raptors. I don't know if it's just trained from past eras or what. I know why you take a special pleasure. But yeah,
I was going to say you take even more pleasure if you were watching the Raptors broadcast, which the highlight of the game for me was when Dennis Schroeder got hit in the face and the response was they called a foul.
Well, Mamu very specifically was like, he hit my arm.
It was actually the one after where Dennis got the and one where he was
hit in the face very clearly. Yeah, we got hit on the face twice. So you do have to clarify. But yeah, Donovan was just phenomenal. A really, really fun watch. I thought, sometimes when you're a star scorer like that, you have to kind of pick the time that you're going to just go do what you need to do to go get a bucket. And sometimes you don't always pick right. That's a really hard thing to do. But I felt like every time he did it, he, one, he delivered. And two, it was the right time. It was the right time because I thought Toronto did a lot of really good stuff in this game. Like I thought game one was the story of game one to me was Toronto gets baited into or gets forced into playing the Cavs style, for 48 minutes, but shoots well enough and gets enough shot making in the first half to stay close, and make the game look more competitive, even though it was a total Cavs game. This was much more of a Raptors game. They did a really nice job answering the bell and pushing even on makes for the Cavs, getting them in transition. They were allowed to be a lot more physical defensively on both sides of the floor. I mean, we had like 60 plus free throws in game one, and the Cavs had 22. The Raptors had 17, and at least 6 of the Cavs were intentionally fouling at the end of the game. Yeah. So it was allowed to be a much more physical game, which I think really helped the Raptors gunk up things, especially for the Cavs role players. Made their catches a little tougher, made it harder for them to attack. So the fact that the Raptors were able to play their game and still it was a pretty comfortable win for the Cavs. They got it close to like 7, I think, in the mid fourth. But then Donovan just shut the door, and that was kind of the end of it.
Yeah.
I gotta say, it's got to be pretty dispiriting for them.
Well, and what really stands out to me about the whole Don performance is Toronto did make a bunch of those pushes, right? And they did throw a variety of different looks. And, to the Ladonto point there, or whatever you want to call it, I think how well he was playing helped alleviate any stress that I had in this game. I was not fearful at any point. I just felt like Don was going to answer every single time that Toronto made a push. And that is, to me, that's the highest compliment you can pay a star player when they're delivering at that high of a level in a playoff game, because to your point, Toronto did a lot of things to make the Cavs uncomfortable, right? Like to start the game, I was really interested that they weren't pressuring at all, right? Like we said that they were going to lower those pickup points, maybe adjust, because obviously Jakob Poeltl wasn't able to defend in space, and the Cavs were getting to the rim at will in game one, and they were just kind of sitting back below the 3-point lines to start the game.
And that was not the right adjustment. It was even easier.
Yeah, that was maybe a bit of an overcorrection. I think maybe the thought was, hey, we're just going to do this with Jakob Poeltl, because as soon as the Cavs kind of went to some of those transitional lineups, the Raptors dialed up that pressure, right? And it was coming out of a timeout. You could tell that they were trying to force the Cavs to get uncomfortable. There was a lot of those early possessions where there was, Sam Merrill and Max Strus out there, where they're being asked to do not secondary playmaking, but they're being asked to initiate the offense from way above the 3-point line. Toronto did a really good job in those situations of forcing them to pick the ball up, right? Like there was times where Sam's picking up the ball, turning his back to the basket. I think the same thing happened to Max a couple times.
Same with Dean a couple times.
Yeah, they really got them to feel uncomfortable in a lot of those spots. And, really, it wasn't like the Cavs had a great game. What the Cavs had was, I think you could argue that, I was about to say, I think you could argue they had the 3 best players in this game. I think Don, James, and Evan were the 3 best players. I think
that is a very fair argument. Normally, I would put my, raise your eyebrows when you say that for a game that, you can say that when you win by 30 normally. You don't normally get to say that when you win by 10, but I think you're spot on.
I think it speaks to how much guys were struggling outside of them, right? Like Jared, I wouldn't say struggled. The Cavs struggled to get him the ball later on in the game, but I actually thought he set the tone early. I thought his two-way play was great. That first transitional lineup that
led the team in plus minus, by the way.
Yeah, that first kind of transitional lineup that did have some struggles, he had some really important buckets and some really important stops in that stretch. So I thought he really set the tone early. But I think the fact that the Cavs had the 3 best players in this game, and it was as close as it was, kind of speaks to how much everyone else struggled, right? Like I thought that this was a game where you could tell Toronto was making them uncomfortable. Sam, Dean, and Jalen in particular, I think they passed up too many open shots. And maybe in Sam's case, he was holding his wrist or his shooting hand in the first quarter. It seemed like maybe that was bothering him, and that was part of it. But when you're facing this aggressive of a defense, you cannot turn down those shots. When they're being created for you, you have to take them every single time. And I think that this is one of those spots where if the role guys aren't going to be better, Cavs might have, a tough trip to Toronto, because I don't think you can bank on Donovan, James, and Evan outplaying everybody on the Raptors on the road.
No, you can't. But it's nice when you can.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think, I mean, where do you want to go next? Do you want to talk about Evan, or do you want to talk about James?
I think I want to continue kind of with what Toronto did to
Sure.
change things up, because I thought, throwing a variety of different looks was really smart on their behalf.
And they made probably the biggest adjustment that you can make, which is they benched their starting center.
Yeah, they benched Jakob Poeltl for CMB, which I gotta say, I like him a lot. He needs to work on the outside shot, but he's a player. I think Toronto has a real hit there.
His finishing is kind of funky. It's like he releases the ball way underneath the rim, and it's so fast that the shot blockers can't get there. Kind of a cool player, the way he gets the ball up.
Totally different body types, but do you know what those kind of like quick little finishes in the paint remind me of? It reminds me of Sean Marion, where it's such a weird, unorthodox release point when you're kind of around the basket that it just throws the defenders off. But
yeah, there's a lot where I'm like, we're in a good spot to contest this, and he just kind of snuck it under.
Yeah, I just felt like Toronto understood that they were going to need to win the possession battle, and they were going to need to try to change things up in terms of, their transition offense, which they got a lot more live ball turnovers off of the Cavs. I thought that was in a very good game from James Harden. I thought that was one of the areas where he was a little bit weaker with, 4 assists and 5 turnovers, quite a few of those of the live ball variety. But attacking the glass, I thought that was, a smart adjustment for them. They really had that as a major point of emphasis. And they had a 16-2 edge in transition, right? Like that was one of those things that we talked about coming into this series, that Toronto was going to attack in that way. They had a 64-52 edge in points in the paint. Like these are some of those kind of key things that the Cavs did a good job of containing Toronto in game 1, that they'll want to sharpen up in game 2 or in game 3, because you're going to have less margin for error on the road.
Yeah, man. Honestly, a very concerted effort, and not just from the bigs, but RJ Barrett gets 4 offensive rebounds. A lot of crashes from all over, and again, I really do think like the biggest thing I noticed was just the insistence on pushing. I thought Scotty had a much better game in that capacity. And even though I don't think he had a great scoring game, and yet again, by the way, we had the worst plus minus on the team, which is not good, and they're definitely not going to win the series with that happening. But like I thought when he pushed, even off makes, and just kind of maybe the Cavs were a little flat-footed getting back or didn't have their shell set, they got a good look almost every time. So I think in some ways, like, well, obviously you don't like to have a you don't like to give up anything. It is kind of nice to have some film in a win. That's just of a thing to kind of take away, whether it's challenging the dribble and picking him up a little earlier so he can't get that head of steam or whatever it may be. But I mean, they changed a lot in this game. And unfortunately for them, like the other reasons we thought they might not win the series is what killed them. They couldn't shoot. They went 7 of 26. From 3, and if you're only gonna get 17 free throw attempts, even if you make 14 of them, it's just hard to battering ram your way to an efficient outing, and 105 points in a playoff game just isn't gonna do it against this Cavs team, unless your defense is so phenomenal that you can drag the Cavs into the mud. And while I thought they had some varying success, one thing I will give the Cavs a lot of credit for, because I thought at the end of the second they really dialed up the physicality and pressure, and from the second and third they really were doing a much better job of just like gumming up actions that the Cavs were running. Cavs never really had one of those like 7-minute stretches where the offense was crappy, you know?
No,
Like they would have 2 to
they
3
had like,
possession lulls, but
yes, I
never the
agree with that.
7, 8, 9, 10 possessions in a row where they're not getting good stuff. Now, part of that, I think, if we're being really fair, is covered up by the shot making because the Cavs had so many 9-1-1 crazy shots, crazy outcomes, like even the one in the fourth where Donovan catches the inbound with like 0.3 left, throws it up, gets his own rebound, and hits the floater. Like some of that stuff is like there were a lot of those like spirit crushers for the Raptors in this game. I mean, I also think about the time Raptors block Jarrett and Evan at the rim, and then the Harden just waltzes in for a floater. Like those are like
so
oh my gosh! Like if I'm a Raptors fan, I am just like head in my hands, so defeated. We're doing everything right, and we still can't beat these guys, and that is what this game felt like.
Yeah. Well, I liked your point about even though this is a win, there's a lot of tape for the Cavs, and I think even though the bench was not contributing from a scoring standpoint, and I thought that they made a lot of mistakes in this game.
I think you would even expand that, just say the role players.
Yeah, the role players. Yeah, fair point. I do think I was happier with their overall energy and effort than I've been in past playoff games where we're getting no shows offensively. Like I thought that there was a real concerted effort from Sam, Max, and Dean in particular to really crash in a lot of situations, right? Like they were contributing on the defensive glass, getting back in transition. Like as much as the Cavs lost, that battle in transition 16-2, that's a big gap for a game. Toronto was not efficient in transition at all. And I think some of that was the Cavs getting back and having that point of emphasis on transition defense. Some of it was unforced errors too, right?
A lot of garden variety slop from your boys up north.
A lot of slop. And that was one of the things we talked about, right? That even though they are a high transition frequency team, they weren't the most efficient. If you look at it from a points per play standpoint, for the regular season, the Golden State Warriors were the least efficient transition team in the NBA, averaging 115 points per play. The Toronto Raptors in this game averaged 100 points per play in transition.
I'm going to imagine 100 points per 100 plays.
Yeah, but 100 points per 100 possessions. Yeah, you know what I mean. That's pace adjusted. I'm doing this on the fly, but
it's okay. I still
really
love
bad.
you.
Really bad. 18th percentile in terms of transition efficiency. So the Cavs did a really good job of getting back in those situations, did a good job of crashing, but they're going to need to take better care of the basketball. And some of it, I think, is just as simple as taking those shots when they're available to you, right? Because when you're passing up a good shot trying to hunt for a great one, so often you end up ramming yourself into the defense. You're creating these turnover situations. And Toronto, as you mentioned, they wanted to get out and run. Scotty Barnes was pushing the pace on a lot more possessions. You could tell that was something that they were kind of giving him a free license to do. And the Cavs are going to need to clean that up because that margin for error does get smaller in game 3. I anticipate that they might even start, that change of kind of starting lineup at the start of the third. I would expect them to go with that to start game 3. We'll see what Emmanuel Quickly's availability is. But from a Cavs standpoint, there is a lot of stuff that they can clean up here.
Yeah, it's a little interesting. I wonder if, because if they start CMB, like, okay, are they really going to sign up for 48 minutes? Of CMB at the 5 and then Mamu being the backup 5? Will they go to someone else, right? Or do they just kind of trim the rotation further? Like a guy like AJ Lawson barely got off the floor or off the bench in this when they played 8 guys, and if you don't count him, and really 7 if you don't count Pirtle. So you're kind of seeing, and obviously quickly changes that, but you're kind of seeing Darko tighten the rotation and try to limit it as much as possible. And it's just kind of not really bearing fruit right now. I do think we should talk about the Brandon Ingram game and specifically the job Dean Wade did on him, because we point to Dean turning down some shots and the other role players having kind of a hard time. That man guarded his ass off. And like while Brandon Ingram definitely had a very, very no good bad game where nothing went right for him.
Mhm.
He also didn't really get any looks that made me feel like he had like 2 or 3 open looks. Everything else
Yeah.
was like hard even for him type of contest from Dean, where Dean was getting the spot. When the dribble was picked up, he would close the space and get closer and closer and closer, make BI add just, an extra couple degrees of arc to every jump shot. I just thought he was phenomenal defensively in this game, and that's why he got the start in this series.
And I loved his off-ball defense in particular, right? Like when BI's coming off of those screens and stuff like that, he was top blocking. He was making sure that he was not getting kind of those comfortable mid-range catches. And I thought he did an even better job than he did in game one when it came to that off-ball defense on Brandon Ingram. And we talked about it after game one, where he had to work pretty hard for those first half shots. And in the second half, he didn't want to work as hard. And I thought you could tell that he was losing his composure early in this game, where, Dean is denying that pass. He's got to cut baseline and, relocate on the other side. It's just not what he wants to do, right? Like he wants to be very comfortable and in a rhythm. And he never got comfortable at any point in this game. And I think the Cavs are doing a really, really good job of having physicality on him. Thought Max again.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I thought Max was a demon on him again, just from disrupting the dribble and physicality standpoint. And even Jalen Tyson. I thought Jalen Tyson, as much as he had a bad offensive game, I thought that he did a very good job on his possessions, both on Brandon Ingram and Scotty Barnes. I thought that it was a better performance from him on the defensive end after looking like he was chasing a step or two behind in game one.
Yeah, I mean, the one other thing, and I do want to talk about Tyson, but the last thing I'll say about how they guarded BI is this was a game where, again, game plan discipline, even going back to game one, pays off because they were throwing a lot of bodies at him. Even when Dean was in good position, when he would go to make his move, there was always someone stunting in towards him. And you just look at the shooting splits, and no one on the Raptors could hit. Jamal Shed, who goes 5 of 6 in game one, man, you literally said that's an outlier, and you'll give him those shots. He goes 1 of 5 in game two and can't shoot. RJ Barrett goes 0 of 1, not even getting him up. And you're not guarding Scotty, and you're not guarding Colin Murray Boyles. So like all of a sudden, it just gets real hard for BI to get any room to move. He's already a guy who doesn't really want to go all the way to the rim. He just wants to dribble to his spot and get to a post up. So if he's already out of rhythm on the catch, then he goes to make his move and gets forced into a pickup, then is forced into a tough contested fadeaway. It's like, yeah, you're going to have a 3 for 15 night every now and again when none of your release valves are there for you. I keep going back to what I said before the series started about how I thought one of the roads for the Raptors was just when the Cavs sent help, that the Raptors would be able to make tight windows passes, not just out to shooters, which are the easier reads. But I didn't think they'd be able to consistently make hay with that just because they're not good at shooting. I thought the key to them was guys like Pirtle being a large and carving up space when help was overcommitted to guys like BI or Scotty. And the fact that, they're not able, one, like Pirtle's just been played off the floor, but they're not able to find those easy lanes. And I think that's a credit to the Cavs for playing really disciplined, communicative defense where, they're sending help, but they're not overcommitting. They're not over helping. The passes aren't easy and clean. And it's just, and frankly, BI and Scotty just haven't been able to consistently draw 2 on the ball in a way. They've not forced the Cavs to commit 2 to them the way Donovan forced the Raptors to commit 2 to him tonight. And sometimes basketball is that simple.
Yeah, when you make them look that bad and that uncomfortable, it's going to throw their entire offense off, because that teams move fastest when everyone's in sync, Carter. And Zoom Workplace keeps meetings, chats, and documents and more together, so your workflow is like a perfect play. Keep work moving and zoom ahead with Zoom Workplace. I do think that it's really, really important, because not to get ahead of ourselves, I think Toronto is still capable of, winning a game and extending this series. But when you look at kind of the Eastern Conference in totality, there's two big wings, right? Like it's Brandon Ingram and Jason Tatum coming off of a torn
I would
Achilles.
give Jaylen Brown the big wing designation at this point. He's
But
6'7".
he's like 6'6".
He's 6'7" and strong and plays big.
Fair. I just think of like the big wings. Like I think, you know, when you're talking about a 6'7", 6'6" or 6'7" guy, you know, in comparison, I think the
I
Cavs
understand
have guys
what
that
you're
can match
saying.
up there.
I just think there is a Jaylen stylistically belongs in that conversation to me.
Yeah, that's fair enough. But I think, you know, you try to get what you can from these matchups, right? And I think even coming off of a torn Achilles, I probably respect Jason Tatum a little bit more and his ability to contribute in a variety of ways. But I do think what Dean's doing is important, and we've seen him, you know, against an All NBA Brandon or Jason Tatum in the past do really well in those matchups as well. So I think all of that is really important, and I continue to be really impressed with the overall defensive effort. There's certainly lapses. I think there are times where James would have liked it for him to step in and take a charge, or to, you know, offer up some resistance there.
Another great RJ game, and it's no surprise.
Right. There are a lot of times where I'm like, okay, RJ's getting by James a little too easily. And then there's a lot of times where, you know, I knew RJ was bad navigating screens. I don't think I fully realized how bad he was as an off-ball defender. Maybe it's gotten worse since he was in Toronto. I don't remember it being this bad with the Knicks, or maybe our offense just moves better. But that I think he believes that his responsibility when he sees a screen is to run into it. Like it really feels that way, because
and guys, this is not easy for Justin. This is a fellow countryman.
Not only is it a fellow countryman, it's a fellow Rowan. This is hurting me a lot.
Oh my gosh, a double.
But you know, it's amazing how bad he is as an off-ball defender, and the amount of times that he lost James or other guys. That continues to be a scab that the Cavs pick at. But I think the encouraging thing for all the times that RJ gets by James is when we were previewing the series, we said, well, if BI and Scotty can't get downhill because Evan and Dean are doing their jobs, which I think through 2 games we can pretty satisfactorily,
certainly in the half court.
Yeah, in the half court they are not getting downhill and they're not creating advantages in those spots. Maybe RJ is the one that can get the Cavs defense completely into rotation, and I think for the most part the Cavs are doing a good job when those breakdowns occur. They'll provide some help at the rim, but they're not over helping, right? And if RJ scores, he scores. We're not going to let the rest of the team get comfortable trying to stop this. And I think that is the right policy, and something that I'd like to see even in other matchups versus more dangerous players than RJ Barrett. Like if James is forced to guard those types of players in those matchups, I'm pretty comfortable with what the Cavs are doing here. And it's almost, in some ways, it's reminiscent to some extent of what the Pacers did with Don, which is, all right, we're going to defend him one-on-one. If he's getting into the paint, we'll send some help, but we're not going to give him easy passes that get everybody else going.
Yeah, I just feel like if I'd told you that, hey, one thing we're a little worried about going into this series is RJ getting downhill, and if I told you he's got 46 points and 26 shots through 2 games, we'd be like, oh man, it must really be hurting when he's out there. Just goes to show you what a complicated game the sport of basketball is. Because you know, one of my favorite things to do after a playoff win, Justin, is some Schadenfreude listening to the opposition podcast, and and most of them are just talking about RJ's defense and how it's so untenable for them, and like that's what great teams are supposed to do. And this is why I've been so frustrated by this Cavs team in past playoff runs, and like that lack of imposition of will. Because it's like, guys, this is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to keep presenting problems for the opposition until they run out of solutions.
Right.
And it feels like, you know, the fact that we've already seen Toronto make some pretty big changes to what they're doing from game 1 to game 2. Like they're already playing cards, and those aren't bearing fruit, and that is just very, very encouraging for the Cavs' chances of making this a quick series.
Yeah, and I think trying to go for the kill in game 3 is going to be really important too, because I think rest opportunity to continue to have film sessions and to work with one another, to try to manage Jarrett's knee tendonitis as well. I think taking care of business is really, really important here. And it reminds me of,
especially with, by the way, Orlando taking one off of Detroit to start.
Yep. It's, there's a very, very good chance that series gets extended now at this point. So you have the opportunity to give yourself some rest here. And I think what I am interested to see is what Kenny does from a rotational standpoint going into game 3, right? Because we saw him change things up a little bit here in game 2. Dennis was the 8th man coming into this game rather than Jalen Tyson. I did find it really interesting. We highlighted how we had about 10 minutes of no Dean with Max and Jalen out there last game. Those minutes went really, really well for the Cavs. We got 0 minutes of that in this game, where Dean was off the floor and Max and Jalen were playing together as the 4-3. For the most part, those minutes went pretty well, though. The Cavs played about 14 minutes with Dean and Jarrett off. They were outscored by 6 in those minutes. In 4 minutes where Dean and Evan were off, they won those minutes by 3. So only a -3 overall for those kind of smaller minutes with you could probably argue 4 guards out or 3 guards out there. But I thought that those minutes went okay. But I do think getting Jalen Tyson going is important, not only for this series, but in particular for the next couple rounds if the Cavs go that far. I do think he needs to be a major part of what they're doing.
Yeah, I just think in general, like to zoom out a little bit, outside of Dean, who while his offense I thought was poor in this game, I thought his defense was so phenomenal that, normally if Dean goes 1 of 3 in a game, he's not getting to 28 minutes. But I thought his defense was so phenomenal, and maybe to just call a spade, the offensive contributions from the rest of the role players was so marginal that he got extra run. Plus he closed, which obviously also helps. But I do feel like, I feel pretty good about Dean and Max. But I think the Merrill, Schroeder, Tyson, Keon minutes have all kind of been an adventure so far. And that doesn't mean all bad, just maybe a little bit unreliable. Like I don't really know what to expect from any of those 4 right now.
Yeah. Even when they're not going well, I'm not sitting there being like, oh, well, they should just put so-and-so in. Like, I'm not feeling that because I'm not feeling that confident. Like if Kenny would have in, the start of the 4th quarter went to Thomas Bryant next to Evan Mobley rather than playing one of those guys, I wouldn't have been sitting there being like, what on earth is Kenny doing? I'd be like, okay, yeah,
he's searching a little bit for someone who's going to be consistent.
Try something. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I feel like that if I have anything to like, some minor concerns is like, you do kind of just want 3 of those guys off the bench just to be like, we are definitely the 3 guys that are going to come off the bench if their rotation tightens. And I certainly don't know who that is yet. Jalen, I thought, had a really indecisive offensive game. Kind of looked like the first couple weeks of the season where he didn't quite know where to contribute. Obviously, hitting the corner 3 was huge. Keon just, while he got a couple steals, which was nice, defended pretty well, even when he got switched on to some of these bigger guys that Toronto has to offer. I think it's a hard series for Keon, by the way, just because so much of the attack comes from these big, strong guys.
It comes from guys with some serious weight. Yeah.
Even RJ is a really strong 2 guard. But I obviously he didn't shoot well and wasn't able to attack when he had a runway. When he got an overly hard closeout, and then Dennis, I just think it's been really tough, especially when he plays without Dean at the 4 or the double big, because it's just now you're just getting real small. And like the Raptors are not respecting Dennis as an offensive threat.
No, especially when he doesn't have the ball in his hands. Like he is getting.
I think when he has the ball in his hands, he's not really getting a lot of respect. They're going
especially when he doesn't.
They're going way under. They're switching and have been comfortable, kind of staying in their shell because they're trusting that, hey, it's a set defense. Even against a set defense, it's going to be hard for him just to blow by a guy like Mamu and get an easy bucket. So Yeah, I don't think any of these bench players are really draping themselves in glory right now. We obviously, with the exception of Max's amazing game one, so I
Yeah.
would not include him in that group. But yeah, so like that's just a thing to keep an eye on. I think I hope that
-5 in those minutes, by the way. 8 minutes total with Dennis out there with no Dean, and yeah, they were outscored by 5.
that feels anecdotally true. And
Yeah.
obviously, remember, guys, these are super small samples. They might not mean anything, but that does match my eye test.
There's also they only scored 15 points in an 8-minute span, which for this game, and again they were pretty damn productive. Oh, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong game.
Oh, it's okay.
Continue.
I still love you.
Looking up live stats is tough, my friend.
It's okay. Yeah, it's just a bit of a challenge. But in general, I will say this in defense of the role players. I think the stars with a little bit of tape will watch and realize that they were getting the ball out a little late on some of these hard doubles, or when Toronto was putting 2 on the ball and sending their help, they were sending it very aggressively, and there were a couple times where it was the one extra backup dribble before throwing it over, and then the defense is already pre-rotating back.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think that Sam, Dean, Jalen, and Keon especially, I saw a couple of his kicks did not end up being easy looks. I wonder if the Stars can get them a little bit of cleaner shots. I felt like Toronto was able to get cleaner shots than the Cavs were from distance a lot in this game. They just didn't have the same shooting talent. It's all one big ecosystem at the end of the day, and I think there's even stuff for the Stars who were phenomenal in this game to take away.
Yeah. And to correct myself from earlier, it was 13 minutes with Dennis and no Dean in this game, and they were outscored by 2. The tougher stretch came where they were outscored by 7 with Don, Dennis, Max, Sam, and Evan. Like that lineup didn't do very well. It was one of their worst lineups on the day. So I do think that there's a lot of things for them to work on. One of those Keon kickouts that you're talking about, I think Jalen basically like passed up an open shot at the rim after passing up what I thought was a good 3-point look for him. It did seem like when he kind of got into it physically with RJ, that kind of woke up Jalen. I felt like he was playing with a little bit more confidence and a bit more of an edge. After that, he had a tussle, I guess, with Scotty Barnes, where it did look like Scotty flopped with next to no contact, and RJ went after him after that, and Scotty threw him to the ground. I think the next possession after that, and that seemed to get Jalen going. I kind of hope, like, he seems to be the type of guy that responds to that kind of physicality. I wouldn't be surprised. Normally, role players played better at home than on the road, which is a little concerning, given that we have kind of these questions about these guys, about who's kind of going to be that 7th, 8th, 9th that's providing kind of consistent contributions here. But I wouldn't be shocked to see Jalen play better in a hostile environment. He just seems like that type of player. I do think that, Kenny needs to continue to give him opportunities, because this is important. It's really, really important that Jalen is contributing, and obviously we can't bank on it. And what the top guys do is more important. But I think him being in that mix, and at the end of the day, a top 7 contributor for the Cavs in the playoffs, I think that needs to be the case in order for the Cavs to put their best foot forward.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Gotta say, Justin, someone in the chat just alerted me. The Hawks just went on a 15-3 run to go up on the Knicks with 10 seconds left. Brunson just hit a 3, and man, are we going to see some of these other series extended?
I hope so. I hope so.
It does just go to show you like how nice it is just to take care of business at home, and like it is like just a little bit of gratefulness reminder that we really haven't had to sweat too much as these guys kind of find their way. Justin, we cannot end this podcast, and we're getting near the end, without talking about Evan, who
oh my God, we didn't talk about Evan,
who has been, and I'll note, I tried to talk about him earlier, and you said, I want to talk about strategy, which is a very smart thing to do in a post-game podcast, but I digress. Evan Mobley, just another phenomenal game. The comfort level was really, really high. 25 points, 11 of 13 from the field. Hit another 3, 2 or 3 from the line, 8 boards. Again, phenomenal phenomenal defense on Scotty Barnes. You got to give him a lot of love for what he's doing on that end of the floor. And it does feel like the comfort level's higher than it's ever been for him in the postseason.
And I think it's significant because this is not an easy matchup for Evan Mobley. Like it's not like this is a very small team that doesn't play with physicality and he's kind of shooting over guys. Toronto's going to bump you. They're going to make you uncomfortable. They're going to try to disrupt your dribble. And he's been confident initiating. He's found the soft spots in the defense and has punished
going
them
up
with
so freaking fast.
It's really, really damn encouraging because I think when you look at the Eastern Conference and at least the side of the bracket that the Cavs are on, you push back when I said this about Dean and defending wings, but I do think that from a power forward, like the types of power forwards that he could potentially be going up against, I think that this is the toughest matchup that Evan's going to have at least in the Eastern Conference. Him playing this damn well in this series is incredibly encouraging for me. Like this is exactly what you need from Evan Mobley. I bet you he probably took it personally that he did not get a Defensive Player of the Year vote. When you talk about the difficulty of these matchups, guy that got a whole lot more votes than him doesn't seem to be able to stop him, while he does a really good job of stopping that player. So I am encouraged to see that. I think he looks as confident, as explosive as I have seen him all season. I think this is some of the best basketball that Mobley's playing. And if he continues to flat out win this matchup, Toronto doesn't have all the adjustments in the world will not matter if Evan Mobley continues to win his matchup in all these games, because they have such an advantage when it comes to the backcourt production that if Evan Mobley is also playing Scotty Barnes, I don't think that Brandon Ingram's going to make up for that deficit.
No, he's not. And he was phenomenal. It is funny, by the way. I can't help but sit and
notice all the late buckets Scotty gets to the pad of stats. Yeah.
More specifically, the big thing I hammered all summer and all year was Evan's field goal attempts and the fact that he has not crossed 13 in field goal attempts in a game.
And it hasn't happened yet.
Still hasn't happened. Even in this game, he goes 11 for 13. But I'll take this kind of usage. I'll take this kind of aggressiveness and decisiveness. Keeping the ball moving, not turning the ball over, not putting the ball out and letting guards dig in. It's funny, you mentioned that this would be the toughest individual matchup for Evan. I still think a Boston team is the toughest matchup for Evan because of the way they help.
Because of the scheme.
Because of the way they help. And it's and they're just digging in, and when you think you have an advantage, you actually don't. I think it's a little more straightforward for him in this series. But he's making it straightforward by catching it and going up and dunking it right away. And that's really all we've ever wanted from the man is no more pump fakes. Or if you pump fake, you better go up strong right after. And we're getting to see that. And this Cavs team, as you mentioned, if he's playing like this, it's just like their margin for error is so big that they can have a game where they miss 8 free throws and shoot 32% from 3. And all their role players pretty much underperform offensively, and they still score 115 points on the backs of Evan, Donovan, and James.
He is 17 of 22 from the field so far in this series with only 3 turnovers.
Woo!
With the pressure Toronto shows, right? And they were doubling him a fair bit, right? They're trying to force turnovers. It's not, oh, he's so dangerous as an isolation scorer. We need to send help and double. They are trying to challenge him. They're, doubting his dribble. They're doubting his ability to make the right play in those situations, which I think is fair to test him in those spots, right? We've seen Evan make mistakes. We've seen him be pressured at times, even in these matchups versus Toronto, and it not pay off. I just think he's doing exactly what he needs to do, and he's playing the best basketball of his career at a really, really important time. I'm just really, really thrilled with what I'm seeing from Evan Mobley, and confidence just seems to be growing by the game. So
yeah, how could you not be, man?
It's just fantastic to see. It's a lot of fun to see, all 3 stars rolling for the Cavs, Jared contributing at a high level. Let's get everyone else along for the ride. And thanks to everyone that's along for the ride tonight. We really appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Make sure you like and subscribe. Click that notification bell so you know when we're going live. If you're listening via podcast and you want to support us, leave us a rating, leave a review, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, and help cook those books. If you want to be part of Chase Down's exclusive Discord chat, send a screenshot of the video to chasedownpod@gmail.com. However you choose to support us, we really do appreciate it. Make sure you guys are staying safe out there. Until next time, go Cavs.